In our last video, we talked about Laura's birth chart and we looked at all of her different houses, the different departments of her life. In this video, we're going to talk about her future. And so we're going to look at her current solar return. We're going to look at her next upcoming solar return. And we're also going to look at two of her lunar cycles, the current one and the upcoming one. So off to the side here, you can see Laura's 2023 solar return. Laura just happened to contact me and let me know that she has had some health problems, lots of surgeries. And so the first planet we want to look at in a chart would be Mars. It's going to tell us about health. And you can see Mars up there in the 10th house. Mars is opposing Saturn down on that 4th house cusp. Mars opposing Saturn by itself is very difficult for health. The problem here is that Mars is up there on that 10th house cusp, and the 10th house cusp belongs to Saturn. And so this is just a very painful and difficult experience. Health is going to be slow at best in terms of making progress. Also, Saturn on that 4th house cusp, that 4th house cusp represents sensitivity. So I'm assuming that the surgeries, some of them have been pretty painful. Also, you can see Mars making a 15-degree aspect to Mercury in the 9th house. This is worry. And then Mars is also making a 30-degree aspect to Ceres. The Ceres is in the 11th house. So there was something about this that was either unusual or it came upon very sudden. And then the obvious one here is that Mars is in the 10th house. So we'd want to look at Saturn. We've already talked about Saturn, but from Saturn's perspective, it's actually being opposed by Mars. And this is also tends to be on the painful side, dealing with an injury, in this case, surgeries. And lastly, you can see Uranus there on the 7th house cusp. It is opposing the ascendant. The ascendant is Mars's home. And along with that, Uranus is squaring Mercury, which we already talked about. This is just really strong worry. And the Uranus aspect, as kind of what we talked about before, it's unusual or very sudden. So another planet in this solar return that really stands out is the Sun in the 9th house in Leo. The reason this is difficult is because it's opposing Pluto, making an inconjunct to Vader, and it's squaring the Moon. These all have the same meanings because Pluto is one of the rulers of Scorpio in the 8th house. Vader is, in my opinion, the ruler of the 8th house, the true ruler. And then the Moon is in Scorpio, Scorpio being the sign of Vader. But all of them have the same meaning. It's your social life is being blocked, meaning whatever plans you made, no matter how optimistic you were to get out there and spend time with friends and people that you know, this slowed that down and blocked it from happening. We also want to talk about Saturn. You can see it down there on the 4th house cusp. The 4th house cusp being home. So I'm assuming if someone's been injured, they probably have been spending time at home, more time at home. And then the Moon, the ruler of the 4th house, up there in the 12th house is trining Saturn. The 12th house being rest and healing. So this is a trine. It's positive, harmonious. So you spend a lot of time at home healing probably from your injuries. That's just in your chart. So coming up, we will look at Laura's 2024 solar return cycle, which renews in July. But right now we're going to look at the lunar cycle going on at the present. And looking at this chart, obviously we're going to start with Mars again, just to see what health is like. And Mars is not making a lot of aspects in this chart. It makes a 15-degree aspect to Mercury. Again, that's more worry more than anything else. But because Mars is in the 10th house, we're going to want to look at Saturn. And Saturn is making both a 15-degree aspect to Vader, and it's also making a 45 or semi-square to Pluto. And that's just blockage. It's just things are not moving very fast. You're not healing very fast. Things are just taking forever in terms of your health, in terms of your health improving. Also, the Moon is ruling the ascendant, and the Moon is making a sextile to the ascendant along with Venus. This is just contradicting what I just said, but it's showing that you are making some progress and things are getting better in terms of your health. Also, you can see Mercury up there on the 11th house cusp at 21 degrees of Aries, and it's being squared by both Compania and Ceres. This square is telling us about looking inward, and this is repetitive thinking over and over and over again. Maybe what you could have done differently. If you suffered an accident, maybe there's time spent, a lot of time spent, thinking about what you could have done to prevent it, and don't do that. It's in your chart. This was going to happen. So anyways, I don't know if that helps, but it's definitely there, and it's strong. And the last planet I'm going to talk about in this chart is Venus. It's there in the 11th house. One of the things that I notice is that Jupiter's forming a 15-degree aspect to Venus. This typically shows increase in income, or money just comes in from somewhere where you weren't expecting it, but money has come in during this period. And then if you look at the second house cusp, the cusp of Venus, both Jupiter and Neptune are making positive aspects to this house cusp. So it's kind of a strong aspect in your chart. So moving on, we're going to look at the next upcoming lunar cycle. This one begins on June 3rd. And again, we're going to start with Mars. You can see Mars in the 6th house in Aries. Mars is actually very well aspected here. It makes a sextile to Vader down in the 4th house, but more importantly, it makes a 15-degree aspect to the moon on that 7th house cusp. So the moon being on the 7th house cusp is you working in cooperation with others in terms of your healing. So physical therapy, whatever they're telling you in terms of what you got to do to heal, and it's going to work. You're going to work with them, and you're going to see progress from these two aspects. Also, Mars being in the 6th house, we want to look at Ceres in the 3rd house. It's very well aspected. Compania to the 9th house is really good. And then the trine to Uranus and the sextile to Saturn, all very good aspects for healing. You should see progress in whatever it is in terms of injuries during this cycle. Something else that stands out in this chart is the same as the last one, where we have Venus up there in the 8th house conjunct the Sun. What's important here is Venus is in the 8th house, and the ruler of the 8th house is Vader. And you can see it down there in the 4th house. Well, Vader is squaring Jupiter and Mercury, but it's the Jupiter square that's showing that you're going to do well in terms of income this month. Your finances are going to be doing great for this cycle. And last, we want to talk about the moon. It's kind of strong here. We talked about it before, but it's sitting there on the 7th house cusp. The moon represents your home life and also your relationship with your parents. Well, the moon is making a 15-degree aspect to Mars, and that's anger. Typically. And then also the 4th house ruler down there, you can see the 4th house is at 19 of Aquarius. We want to look at Uranus, and Uranus is also making a 30-degree aspect to Mars. So there's probably going to be some anger directed to someone in the home or parents. So we're going to take a look at the next solar return cycle, which begins in July of this year, 2024. Again, we're going to start with Mars. You can see it down there in the 3rd house. It's part of a T-square, Vader and Mercury opposing one another, and they're both squaring Mars. And this is telling us that your rehabilitation will continue into next year. Not a great aspect for health. I wish I had better news, but that's kind of what I'm seeing in terms of recovering from an injury. And I'm just going to add in a couple more things here. Venus over there in the 6th house opposing the ascendant. This is really good for healing. This is really good for health. And then also Compania down there in the 6th house making an inconjunct to the ascendant over there at 19 degrees of Aquarius. Both Venus and Compania making good aspects. This could show kind of a split year, which means I talked about the difficulty that you might have recovering during this solar cycle. So we could see difficulty in maybe the first half of this cycle, and then Venus and Compania are going to tell us about how things may get much better towards the end of the year. And if it does work out that you have a kind of a split year, like I was saying, that's going to show up in the lunar cycles, just so you know. So we've talked about Venus and your income in other charts, the same thing is occurring in this one. You've got some really good Venus aspects. You can see the second house cusp at 12 degrees of Aries. Venus is trining that cusp from the sixth house. And then Jupiter at 13 of Gemini making the sextile. This is all very good, very strong too. But with Aries on that second house cusp, we want to look at Mars. And Mars is part of that T-square. So I'm not sure what that means, but again, it's going to show up in your lunar cycles as to months you're probably going to make really good money, and then other months you may have a lot of expenses or something to offset that. Kind of a roller coaster ride. So Laura, these are the major points of this solar return chart. If you do have any further questions, go ahead and put them in the comment section of the YouTube video link that I send you. And I hope all this information helped in some way. Best wishes and good luck.